Hey, good evening. My name is Liat Raz, and I'm the Family Empowerment Organizer at Plant Powered Metro New York. Plant Powered Metro New York is a community-based organization that's committed to our collective health empowerment through whole food, plant-based nutrition, which is an evidence-based approach to nutrition that can prevent, treat, and even reverse chronic illness. While we normally offer live sessions to build community around health and nutrition, we are offering this program as part of a web series during this season of COVID-19. So before we start again, just keep yourself muted and we will have a Q&A at the end, and we'll all be able to present ourselves, introduce ourselves, I mean. So we are so excited to have you here with us this evening so we can all get more knowledge and tools to empower us on this journey of raising whole food, plant-based kids. This evening, we're grateful to be joined by Dr. Yami Kazorla Lancaster. I hope I pronounced this correctly. I love your name. To tell us about her 5 pillars of healthy eating and talk about intuitive eating. I can't wait to hear all about that. So Dr. Yami is a board certified pediatrician, a certified lifestyle medicine physician, national board certified health and wellness coach, author, podcast host, and professional speaker. She's a passionate promoter of healthy lifestyles, especially the power of plant-based diets for prevention of chronic disease. She founded VeggieFitKids.com, where she provides information on plant-based diets for children. She also hosts the podcast Veggie Doctor Radio. And that's not all. Dr. Yami obtained a certificate in plant-based nutrition. She's a certified Food for Life instructor and a Jack Canfield Success Principle certified trainer. She's a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and a diplomate of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Dr. Yami owns Nourish Wellness, a pediatric micro practice in Yakima, Washington, and where she lives with her husband and 2 active sons. Her book is entitled A Parent's Guide to Intuitive Eating: How to Raise Kids Who Love to Eat Healthy. I can't wait to hear all about it. I already ordered my book. Yes. You can learn more about Dr. Yami on www.dryami.com. So without further ado, Dr. Yami.
Thank you, Liat. Thank you so much for having me, Liat and Liana. I really appreciate being able to speak to your group, especially during this time when it's nice for us to be able to interact, even though we can't do it in person. So this gives me an opportunity to actually be with you guys from all the way across the country here in Washington State. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that I can give you a presentation here. And I'm doing this actually from a special program called Mentimeter. And let's open it up big here, full screen. And in a second, if you want, you'll be able to participate in it as well, which is really neat. It has audience participation. And then at the end, there should be time for questions. So my presentation is how to raise happy, healthy eaters. Now, I'm going to go a little bit quickly through some of it because I want to make sure that there's enough time. But before I start with the information, I just kind of want you to think about how your life would be different if you weren't stressed about your child's eating. Just reflect on that for a minute. What would your life be like if you didn't spend time worrying about what your kids were eating? So today I'm going to cover 5 simple principles for eating well-being. I'm going to cover the first 2 the more thoroughly, and then the other ones we're just going to kind of do quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But if you want to join in the interactive portion, you can do that on your phone, or you can even open a separate browser on your computer. Go to menti.com, menti.com, and use the code 398198. Obviously, if you're watching the recorded version of this, you can no longer participate, but those of you that are with me live, you can. So first of all, if you are participating, we'll see if anybody joined in. It's going to let you choose your age. So if you are logged in, see if anybody did it, then you can see if it'll go on the little graph, the little pie chart. So it's just a few categories: under 20, 20 to 39, 40 to 60, 61 to 79, greater than 80. If there's anybody here that's over 80, I'm sure it's probably because you eat lots of vegetables, because everybody looks super young. Okay, great. So I don't know how many people entered, but everybody is between, oh, we got a 40 to 60, 120 to 39. But it looks like the majority are between 20 and 39 years of age, which makes sense for parents. And who do you feed? Do you have kids that you feed, nieces and nephews, maybe husbands, grandchildren, or you only need to feed yourself? All right, so we're feeding kids, which is perfect because that's what I'm going to be talking about. But this really applies to anybody. So how do you feel about feeding your kids? Do you feel confident and empowered? Like you're just here, you want some extra information, but pretty much you're feeling good. You're still feeling stressed and frustrated about it, or you're just confused. Like you don't even know what to feed them and how to feed them. Good. You guys are doing awesome. So the majority of you guys, you're feeling good, which I love. But there's probably a few things that you haven't heard of before that I'm going to teach you today. And then you can put that into your tool belt and learn even more. So these are the 5 pillars of healthy eating. I do cover this in my book. So number 1 is to honor hunger and satiety. That's called intuitive eating, which we're going to talk about more. Emphasize whole plant foods, which you guys should be experts on, but I'm going to give you a little bit more information on that. Establish a positive environment, be flexible, relax, and have fun. This is me and my youngest son, Desta. This is a couple of years ago for Halloween, even though I would dress as a unicorn every day if I could. But my goals as a physician, a coach, and a mother are threefold: promote health and well-being, decrease the risk of chronic disease and promote longevity, but also to foster confidence, foster eating and body confidence, because I want kids to feel good. I want them to have long, healthy lives, but I don't want them to be stressed out about their eating or their bodies, and I don't want to increase their risk of developing eating disorders. So number 1, honor hunger and satiety. This is the modern mom here saying, my daughter is a modern baby. She doesn't cry when she is hungry. She texts me. I don't think we're at that point yet. Okay, so whenever you're at a meal, do you ever encourage your child to eat more? Even say, it's a little bite more, have a little bit more before you can go play. Do you ever have to limit your child's intake and say, you've had enough, no more bread, you can only eat fruits? Or do you serve the food and you just leave it up to your kids? What do you do? All right, so good job. The majority of you guys are serving the food and not saying anything, which is what I'm assuming. You're just letting the kids decide if and how much they want to eat. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about honoring hunger and satiety. So this is called intuitive eating. Intuitive eating can be confusing because some people think that it means that you know exactly what to eat. Like, oh, I feel like my body's deficient in iron, I should go have a steak. That's not what intuitive eating is. Intuitive eating means that you pay attention to your body when you're hungry, you eat, but you also stop when you're satisfied. In this country, we've lost the skill of intuitive eating, and by age 5, most kids start unlearning intuitive eating. They're usually born as intuitive eaters, but they start unlearning it because we depend on time, meal plans, calories, macronutrients, all of these things to eat rather than listening to our own bodies. But intuitive eating is evidence-based. We have found that people that eat intuitively are able to have a better regulation of their blood sugars and their insulin, so it's better for their metabolism. It's also better for their health markers like cholesterol. People that eat intuitively tend to have lower cholesterols, better digestion, might be at healthier weights, and the best part of all is that they are able to derive more pleasure from their meals because they're waiting until they're hungry to eat. Children routinely display cues when they're hungry and when they're full, and this starts from the time that they're born. But when we force feed them or say, hey, you need to eat another bite before you can go play, or you can't eat your cake until you have your broccoli, it actually causes the opposite reaction in children. They actually eat less fruits and vegetables. And then when we restrict food, it also has a counterproductive result in that kids that are restricted tend to increase food-seeking behaviors. They may get to the point where they're sneaking food and hoarding food and things like that. So both of those things interfere with intuitive eating. Believe it or not, 85% of parents try to get their kids to eat more food. You guys are in the minority, so thankfully you guys have already learned some of these skills, but the majority of parents are trying to get their kids to eat more food. Just like this. Obviously, this kid, he's full. He doesn't want another bite. He's protesting, but the mom is trying to make silly faces and maybe say, here comes the airplane, this kind of thing, to try the child to eat more. So my recommendation and why it's the first pillar is because I think that this is the most important guideline to follow when we feed our kids. Respect hunger and satiety. Do not force eating past fullness or even eating certain foods. Do not restrict food and do not reward with food. Instead, foster a health-promoting home environment and follow Ellen Satter's division of responsibilities. So this is kind of what I alluded to earlier. Your job is to decide what they're going to eat, when they're going to eat, and where they're going to eat, hopefully sitting at a table or sitting somewhere in an organized fashion. That's your job. Then the child has their jobs too. They decide if they're going to eat something at all and how much. It's a division of responsibilities, meaning that you don't cross over into their autonomy and they're not going to be crossing over into your autonomy. So once you give them the plate of food or you put the food in the middle of the table and they decide how much they're going to get of that, you step back, take a deep breath, and it is out of your hands. Another thing I briefly wanted to cover is health at every size. So the way that I word it is the potential that a person has to improve their health, well-being, and joy through healthy lifestyle habits, regardless of weight or body size. And the reason that's important is because kids are going to come in all shapes and sizes, all over the growth chart, and health at every size helps us understand that you don't have to be a certain size in order to reach a state of health and well-being. And it's something that we're learning more about, but I would say most physicians don't practice in this way, but for me, it's very important. When it comes to body size in children, it's important to follow growth trends over time. Like I said, there's going to be some kids that are naturally petite. They're just going to be small, and this is just their genetic potential. There's going to be some kids that are just like built like quarterbacks. They're built like linebackers. They're just big kids. And as long as they're following their trends over time, they don't have this sharp increase or they're dropping off the curve, then it's not something that I worry about. Of course, there's real medical conditions that can happen, but most of them are rare. And we have to take into account familial body types. I practice in an area where there's a lot of Mexican American families. They're just smaller people. If you were to practice in an area where there's like a lot of Asian people, they tend to be smaller people. That's just genetics, and that's okay. So you take that into account whenever you're assessing the body size of a child. But regardless of all of that, even if a child were technically obese, which is not a term that I like to use with parents, I'm not going to be focusing on the child's weight. I'm going to be focusing on habits and behaviors. I'm going to take a thorough diet and lifestyle assessment, and I'm going to see where there's areas where maybe we can improve some behaviors and some habits, what they're eating, how much they're moving, how much they're sleeping. That's a huge one. And I cover all of these lifestyle behaviors in my book, because even if you're feeding your child the right things, but they're not sleeping enough, they may overeat because that's what their body is telling them to do. It's a survival mechanism. Or if they're really stressed out or having any mood or emotional changes, it can definitely affect their eating. So that's why it's important to be able to think of all of those things and not focus on the size per se, but all of these different habits and behaviors that contribute to how we eat. So like I said, emphasize habits and behaviors rather than weight or body size. Okay, number 2, emphasize whole plant foods. This is something you guys probably have down pretty well. Big sister is telling little brother, when mom said you should eat a lot of green stuff, I don't think she meant grasshoppers. Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So when we eat a whole food plant-based diet, we're eating more nutrients, decreased calorie density. We're not getting as much additives in our food. In contrast to processed food, which has less nutrients, increased calorie density, and more additives, sugar, salt, fat, preservatives, flavor enhancers, those kinds of things that can contribute to poor health. Whole plant foods, on the other hand, are packed with antioxidants, vitamins, and nutrients, fiber, my favorite F word, and water. So I want to know if you guys know which plant food category has the biggest bang for your buck in antioxidant potential. Is it herbs and spices, leafy greens, berries, or beans? Which one has more antioxidants? All right, you guys are close, but not quite. The answer is actually herbs and spices. I don't know why it's not showing it, but the correct answer is actually herbs and spices, and then followed by leafy greens and berries. So you're pretty close. Regardless, all whole plant foods have antioxidants. Just eat a variety of plant foods to get it, which is where I'm saying in this slide. Where do you get antioxidants? All whole plant foods, but herbs and spices happen to be particularly concentrated in antioxidants, which is why it's important to add them to our foods. Definitely the leafy greens and the berries, they're just really loaded, but beans are also super high in antioxidants. We forget how awesome beans are. They just have so many amazing properties. And why do we even want antioxidants? Because they fight acute and chronic diseases. What food category has the greatest content of fiber per serving? Is it fruit, vegetables, whole grains, or beans? All right, good job, guys. The answer is beans for the win, my favorite. But why do we even want fiber anyway? There's a lot of different reasons. Of course, it improves intestinal regularity. Everybody knows that one. It helps go to the bathroom. But it also binds to toxins, excess hormones, and cholesterol. And it feeds our good gut bacteria, which does so many amazing things for our body, but it also makes us feel full so that we tend to not overeat. Whenever we're eating foods that are really highly processed, sometimes it's a little bit hard for our bodies to gauge how many calories we took in. And so we may overeat. It's okay to eat those foods every once in a while, but if we're eating mainly foods that are high in fiber and antioxidants and water, that water plus the fiber expands in our tummy and helps us feel nice and full and satisfied, regulates our appetite, increases our metabolism. Yes, increases our metabolism by up to 17%. So the more fiber you eat, the more calories you actually burn, and it makes us more sensitive to insulin, which is a great thing for our metabolism. So you maximize fiber by eating more beans. On average, they have 7 grams per serving. A serving of beans is half a cup. Vegetables has about 4 grams, whole grains 2 to 4 grams a serving, and fruit 2 to 3 grams per serving. All of these are important, but what I want to remind you is please do not neglect your beans. There are hundreds of varieties of beans, so try all of them. Okay, so when it comes to plant foods, just a reminder, it's really good for you, but increased polyphenol intake, so these are types of antioxidants, improved endothelial cell function, that's the lining of our vasculature, decreased TMAO production. TMAO gives feedback to our body, increases our risk of heart disease and other cardiovascular diseases, decreases our cholesterol. Eating a whole food plant-based diet is similar to taking a statin. That's how powerful it can be. Improved insulin sensitivity, and that's why people with diabetes actually may be able to get off of their medications or decrease their medications because they have improved insulin sensitivity and decreased blood glucose, and of course, decreased blood pressure. And we all know already that it's safe for kids. Appropriately planned diets are safe for all stages of the life cycle. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has a policy statement on that. So it's safe and health promoting. Milk is not necessary for kids, despite what you may hear from family members and some pediatricians that are not aware of the evidence. But I do want you to encourage and emphasize whole plant foods where possible instead of the processed foods. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, and then do the best you can. But the more you can focus on those whole foods, the better. When it comes to kids, though, something that I do want you to remember is that even though adequate calories can be obtained from a variety of whole plant foods, and the majority, I would say like 98, 99% of kids are going to do fine, there are some kids that just love raw vegetables. Like they just want to eat raw broccoli and raw carrots, raw cauliflower all day long. If it's a really small kid, like a toddler, their tummies are really small. It's the size of their fist. So if they're filling up on just raw foods all day long, they may not get sufficient calories. Like I said, this is really rare. Most kids are eating a variety of foods. So if you do have a child like that, they just love their raw veggies, just make sure that you're offering them a variety of cooked foods, including nut butters and beans and grains and all of those things. So just a caution because it can happen. Calcium is not a concern for me. It's found in many whole plant foods, and it's particularly rich in beans, greens, and fortified foods. Iron is in beans and greens as well, and protein is just really not a worry for me. As long as you're eating sufficient calories, you are getting adequate protein from whole plant foods. B12 is important to supplement for children. So everybody eating a vegan or predominantly plant-based diet needs to be on B12. In fact, it's becoming increasingly important for everybody because people even that are eating meat is lower in B12 now because the factory farmed animals are not eating the B12 from bacteria like they used to. So they actually, factory farmed animals actually have to be supplemented with B12. A lot of people are not aware of that. And you know, the meat eating crowd's like, oh, what about B12? Well, they're probably not getting B12 the way they thought they were. Vitamin D, most people in North America, a lot of people are deficient. So it doesn't hurt to supplement this. Of course, check with your doctor. And omega-3 DHA EPA. Some people are going to be able to convert the ALA form of omega-3, and you get this from your walnuts and your hemp seeds and your chia seeds and leafy greens, flax seeds. But some people are not going to be able to convert enough Traditionally, people get this from fish, but fish are getting it from microalgae. So we can get it straight from the microalgae. So a vegan DHA EPA supplement, check with your doctor. We still don't have good standards on this, but especially for some kids, it can be helpful. If you're like 100% whole foods, no salt, and you're not having any iodized salt, and you're low in some things like nuts, then zinc may be important as well. Okay, number 3, establish a positive environment. In this restaurant, they're saying there are no animal products in our dishes, but since the meals are prepared by animals, you may find some stray hairs. Well, that's a little scary. So your environment is your vision board for life. Whatever you have in your house, the foods you have in your refrigerator, your pantry, your freezer, your countertops, that is what your children are seeing. The media that you're exposing them to on the television, the magazines you have on the coffee table, whatever you look at on your devices, books that you're reading, that is part of your environment. Also, the words that you say out loud, the words that you say about yourself out loud is part of your environment. And the role modeling that you're producing for your children is the environment, including any family members that are around, how they act and what they say. So be mindful of your environment, because this is your vision board for life. Your environment is what leads to the life that you want to have. What you see and what you hear becomes what you believe and embody, both consciously and subconsciously. So you just have to be careful about that. You are the gatekeeper of your household. You are the boss, okay? A lot of parents have kind of lost that empowerment that they can make the decisions for what they serve in their house. But I want to empower you to feel like you are in control and focus more on what you want to include in your household, not as much as what you want to keep out. I don't want this to feel like deprivation, but definitely, you know, if you want your kids to eat more whole plant foods, you have to put whole plant foods in your house. Include the kids in meal planning and prepping. Sit down together for family meals several times per week. Keep the food at home as health promoting as possible, and serve easy, adaptable meals that please everyone. You don't have to be a short order cook, and I recommend that you don't, but you can make it in a way that is flexible for everybody. And finally, be mindful of the messages you promote in your household. So if you are engaging in what's called fat talk, you're talking about how big your butt is and your thighs and how you want to lose weight and how you're dissatisfied with your body, that is part of your child's environment, and they're going to start absorbing that messaging. So just be cautious of those things. This kind of stuff we've already gone over, but make health promoting foods easy to access, especially if you have teenagers. Teenagers don't really want to spend a lot of time prepping food, so make it really easy for them, because otherwise they're going to go for the chips and the ice cream and stuff like that. Use your appliances, don't be afraid of that. And then make the processed food a little bit more difficult. Put it in a cabinet, don't have it right there on the countertop, because what we see is what we want, okay? Number 4, be flexible. And what I mean by this is 80% of the time, be as health promoting as you can in your home and outside of the home, but 20% of the time, leave some space for flexibility. Food can and should be delicious and enjoyable, and it's okay to celebrate with food. It doesn't have to be 100% you only eat when you're hungry and only eat whole plant foods. It's okay to be part of society and do some of these things, but you're gonna have to determine how you will handle these events with your own family. And as your children grow, it'll evolve over time. If you have a little one that's never been to school and doesn't go to birthday parties, you don't have to give them juice and cake. But once they get out into that environment, then they may want some of those things. And if you just say no, no, no all the time, or at least don't provide some sort of option, then that becomes a super alluring food for them. And they really want it, and they may develop a problem with that. Find a balance and trust with your child. And then finally, relax and have fun. Eating for health and well-being does not have to be stressful. So do the best you can, adjust as you need to, but don't try to focus too far in the future. So the reason this is important to me is because I used to be that person that thought that if my kid had like too much cookies or something, like I was imagining 30 years in the future where they were like failing out of school or something ridiculous. Like, don't worry about that. Just be in the present moment, do the best you can, and have fun. and your kid is going to be fine. I promise. As a pediatrician, as long as you generally have some structure and you provide healthy foods, they are going to have a good life. So focus on the overall pattern of your family's habits and well-beings, and try not to micromanage every single little thing. But also take time to respect your body and model self-acceptance and self-compassion, and be joyful and just have fun. If you're stressed out at the dinner table, everybody's going to be stressed out at the dinner table. So the 5 pillars of healthy eating: honor hunger and satiety, emphasize whole plant foods, establish a positive environment, be flexible, and relax and have fun, just like this lady is with these orange slices. She's having way too much fun. Okay, so now I want to know, what pillars will you focus on after this presentation? Honoring hunger and satiety, emphasizing whole plant foods, establishing a positive environment, being more flexible, or relaxing some more? All right, good. Sounds like all of you have got the whole plant foods thing down. Congratulations. So maybe working on some intuitive eating, kind of looking at what you have around the house. What is your vision board for life? Tweaking that a little bit. And maybe some of you guys need to just take a deep breath and chill a little bit more, which I'm totally cool with. Okay, so my final message is, do the best you can. Show compassion to yourself and to others. Spread love, not hate, and be joyful. That's my vegan hippie message. As you guys heard, I do have a podcast, Veggie Doctor Radio, over 100 episodes and going strong. You can find more about me at dryami.com. There's also Veggie Fit Kids, which I have lots of resources there. And if you ever come to Washington and want to visit my micro practice, it's called Nourish Wellness. Also, I have a book, A Parent's Guide to Intuitive Eating, How to Raise Kids Who Love to Eat Healthy. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, narrated by myself. And you can buy it online, all major online booksellers. But if you want a nice summary of the 5 pillars with recipes and resources and all the resources I include in my book, if you text the word fiber, F-I-B-E-R, to 66866, you can be added to the newsletter and get the download for all of those goodies there. Okay, so like I said, this is what it's called, 5 Simple Steps to Raising Healthy Eaters Without Stress. It's got the 5 pillars. So if you text the word fiber, F-I-B-E-R, to 66866, you can get that. All right. Thank you guys for listening. So now there's plenty of time for questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Yami. That was amazing. You covered so many of my questions with everything, with all the 5 pillars. I didn't know what they were going into this, so thank you so much. I